In the silent depths of the cosmos, where stars whisper ancient secrets and galaxies stretch endlessly, a quiet hum resonates aboard the Ecliptica. This is no ordinary ship. It's a vessel of the Starborn, those chosen by the stars themselves. Here, Lyra, a young Starborn with powers she barely understands, stirs from her slumber. Something feels wrong. The cosmic weave, the delicate balance that holds the universe together, quivers with a ripple of darkness. It's subtle, almost imperceptible, but Lyra feels it in her very soul. A call echoes through the void, a call she can't ignore. The question isn't whether she's ready, it's whether she's brave enough to answer. Tonight, her choice will set the stage for a journey that will challenge everything she thought she knew about courage, destiny, and the stars that guide her. The universe is waiting. Are you ready to join her? As the Ecliptica glides through the vast expanse of space, Lyra steers the ship toward the Vale of Aether, a dying star system pulsating with an eerie, faint glow. The stars here seem to flicker like ghosts, their light strained and fading. Ahead, a rogue comet streaks across the darkness, its icy surface catching the starlight. But this isn't just any comet. Its exterior is marked with intricate, glowing runes etched by the ancient Starborn, a civilization long lost to the annals of cosmic history. Lyra's breath catches as she deciphers the symbols. The message is a warning, etched in a language only she can understand. It speaks of a forgotten force, a cosmic entity known as the Voidweaver, stirring in the deepest reaches of space. The runes describe it as a being of pure entropy, a force capable of unraveling the very fabric of reality. The words seem to hum with a quiet urgency, as if the comet itself is pleading for attention. Her hands tremble slightly on the controls. This is more than she bargained for. The Starborn were known for their wisdom and foresight, and if they left this warning, it wasn't to be taken lightly. The Vale of Aether, already shrouded in mystery, now feels like the edge of something much larger and far more dangerous. Lyra's mind races. Should she press on, driven by curiosity and the need to uncover the truth, or should she retreat, letting the shadows of the unknown remain undisturbed? The Ecliptica hovers in the silence of space, caught between the pull of curiosity and the weight of fear. Lyra's heart pounds as she stares out at the dying stars, their fading light a reminder of how fragile everything truly is. She knows this decision will define her path, not just as a pilot, but as someone who holds the key to understanding what lies beyond the veil. The runes on the comet seem to glow brighter now, as if urging her to choose. And in that moment, she realizes there's no turning back, not when the fate of the cosmos might hang in the balance. As Lyra's ship pierces the shimmering expanse of the Vale of Aether, the cosmos seems to hold its breath. Suddenly, a gravitational storm erupts, its invisible tendrils pulling her vessel into a chaotic dance. The controls tremble in her hands as she fights to stabilize the ship, her heart pounding with every twist and turn. Outside, the storm rages, and the once distant asteroid field looms dangerously close, its jagged rocks glinting like shattered stars. Each maneuver is a gamble, every decision a matter of survival. Amid the chaos, her scanners pick up a faint signal, a distress beacon from a stranded Starborn vessel. Curiosity outweighs caution as Lyra navigates toward it, her ship shuddering under the storm's relentless grip. There she finds Kale, a figure cloaked in the remnants of a tattered spacesuit, his ship battered and lifeless. His eyes meet hers, sharp and determined, as he introduces himself. "I've been tracking the Voidweaver for years," he says, his voice steady despite the storm. "I know its patterns, its weaknesses, but I can't face it alone." Lyra's mind races. Trusting a stranger in the Vale of Aether is a risk, especially when the stakes are so high. Kale's knowledge could be invaluable, but his motives remain unclear. She hesitates, weighing the danger of an ally against the peril of solitude. The Voidweaver is no ordinary foe. It's a force of destruction, a shadow that devours worlds. Facing it alone feels almost impossible, but relying on someone she barely knows could be just as dangerous. In that moment, Lyra realizes this isn't just a decision about Kale. It's a reflection of her own journey. She's spent so long relying solely on herself, convinced that trust was a vulnerability, but the Vale of Aether demands more. It demands courage, not just in battle, but in connection. With a deep breath, she extends her hand. "We'll face it together," she says, her voice firm. It's a choice that marks a turning point, a step towards something greater than herself. As the storm rages on, the two Starborn prepare to confront the darkness that lies ahead, their fates now intertwined under the vast, unyielding stars. As Lyra and Kale descended through the hazy, swirling mists of the Vale, the shattered planet emerged beneath them, a fractured world of jagged cliffs and glowing fissures, as if it had been torn apart by some ancient cataclysm. The air shimmered with an eerie energy, a hum that resonated deep in their bones. "This place feels alive," Kale murmured, his voice barely audible over the wind. Lyra nodded, her heart racing, though not just from the descent. She could sense something calling to her, a pull she couldn't ignore. Their boots crunched against the cracked ground as they ventured toward a structure half buried in the planet's surface. A temple, its towering spires adorned with intricate carvings of stars and celestial patterns. The entrance loomed before them, a massive archway etched with symbols that seemed to shift and glow as they approached. Inside, the air was cool and still, the faint scent of ozone lingering. The temple's walls were lined with murals depicting the Starborn, their luminous forms wielding the power of the stars themselves. At the center of the chamber, resting on a pedestal of obsidian, was a shard of the first star, a fragment of pure, radiant light that pulsed with an otherworldly energy. Lyra felt her own Starborn powers stir in response, a surge of warmth spreading through her chest. But before she could reach for it, the room darkened and the air grew heavy. From the shadows emerged spectral sentinels, their forms shifting and ethereal, their eyes glowing with an ancient, unyielding resolve. Kale stepped forward, his hand gripping the hilt of his blade, but Lyra stopped him. "This is my trial," she said softly, her voice steady despite the knot of doubt tightening in her chest. She had always struggled to control her powers, her abilities more wild and unpredictable than those of her peers. But now, as she faced the sentinels, she knew this was her moment to prove herself. Closing her eyes, she focused on the energy within her, the spark that connected her to the stars. Slowly, she extended her hand, and the air around her began to shimmer with a soft, silver light. The sentinels hesitated, their forms flickering as if caught between realms. Lyra took a deep breath, her doubts melting away as she embraced the strength she had always carried but never fully trusted. With a surge of determination, she unleashed her power, a wave of radiant energy that filled the chamber and sent the sentinels retreating into the shadows. The shard of the first star glowed brighter as Lyra approached, its light harmonizing with her own. She reached out, her fingers brushing against its surface, and in that moment, she felt a connection, a bond with the ancient Starborn who had come before her. She had proven her worth, not just to the temple or the sentinels, but to herself, and with the shard now in her possession, she knew her journey had only just begun. As Lyra clutched the radiant shard, its pulsing light casting long shadows across the ancient ruins, the air around them grew heavy and cold. Kale tightened his grip on his blade, his eyes scanning the darkness. "Something's wrong," he muttered, his voice low. Before Lyra could respond, the shadows erupted into movement. From the void, Voidspawn emerged, twisted, writhing creatures with eyes like dying stars. They surged forward, their eerie shrieks slicing through the silence. Kale sprang into action, his sword flashing as he met the first wave head-on. But the Voidspawn were relentless, their numbers overwhelming. Lyra stood frozen, the shard's energy coursing through her like a storm. It was raw, untamed, and far more than she had ever tried to harness. She could feel it threatening to consume her, to burn away everything she was. "Lyra," Kale shouted, barely fending off another attack. "We can't hold them off forever." Her mind raced. If she unleashed the shard's power, she might save them. But at what cost? The last time she had lost control, the consequences had been devastating. Yet, seeing Kale struggle, outnumbered and alone, something inside her shifted. She couldn't abandon him. Taking a deep breath, Lyra closed her eyes and let the shard's energy flood her veins. Heat surged through her limbs, and the world around her seemed to slow. When she opened her eyes, they glowed with a fierce, otherworldly light. With a cry, she released the energy, a wave of pure force erupting from her and scattering the Voidspawn like leaves in a gale. The silence that followed was deafening. Kale stared at her, his chest heaving, amazement and concern etched across his face. "Are you all right?" he asked, stepping closer. Lyra nodded, though her hands still trembled. I think so, but it's stronger than I thought. I don't know if I can control it again." Kale placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch steadying. "You did what you had to, and you didn't have to do it alone." For the first time, Lyra felt a sense of connection, a bond forged in the heat of battle. She realized then that she wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for him, for their shared purpose, and that made all the difference. The shard's power no longer felt like a burden. It was a tool, a weapon she could learn to wield. Together, they would face whatever came next. As the echoes of the ambush faded into the void, Lyra and Kale found themselves breathing heavily in the shadow of a nearby asteroid field. Kale's voice was steady, but urgent, as he revealed the chilling truth. The Voidweaver was growing stronger, feeding on the life force of dying stars. Each star, extinguished by its dark touch, only added to its insatiable hunger for power. Lyra felt a cold knot form in her chest, as the realization struck her. Her own essence, the starborn energy that pulsed within her, was intrinsically tied to the stars themselves. She wasn't just a wanderer in this cosmic tale. She was a beacon, and the Voidweaver would stop at nothing to claim her. The weight of this truth pressed heavily on her. She could feel the pull of destiny tugging at her, urging her to act. But how should she confront the Voidweaver directly, risking everything in a battle that could tip the balance of the cosmos? Or should she seek out the scattered starborn tribes, those like her who carry the ancient light of the stars within them? Each path was fraught with peril, yet each also held the promise of hope. Kale stood silently beside her, his presence a steady reminder that she wasn't alone. But the choice was hers to make, and it would shape not only her fate, but the fate of the galaxies. As she gazed out at the vast expanse of stars, Lyra felt a surge of determination. The stars were more than just distant lights. They were part of her, and she was part of them. If the Voidweaver sought to devour their light, then it was her duty, her calling, to stand against it. Yet she also knew that raw courage alone might not be enough. The starborn tribes, though scattered and elusive, could be the key to turning the tide. Their combined strength might just be the force needed to challenge the Voidweaver's growing darkness. With resolve hardening in her heart, Lyra turned to Kale. "We need allies, the starborn tribes. They could be our greatest hope." Kale nodded, his eyes reflecting the same determination. The decision was made. Their journey would now take them beyond the familiar, into the unknown reaches of the cosmos, where the starborn tribes had faded into legend. But time was not on their side. With every passing moment, the Voidweaver's power grew, and the stars grew dimmer. The path ahead would be treacherous, but Lyra knew there was no turning back. The fate of the stars, and perhaps all of existence, rested in her hands. As Lyra and Kale approached the starborn enclave of Lumina, the horizon shimmered with an ethereal glow. The floating city seemed to emerge from the stars themselves, its crystalline towers reflecting the soft light of countless celestial bodies. The air hummed with a quiet energy, as if the city itself were alive, whispering secrets of the cosmos. Lumina was a place of beauty and mystery, a sanctuary for those who sought to understand the deeper workings of the universe. Once inside the city's grand hall, Lyra found herself standing before Elder Solara, a figure whose presence radiated both wisdom and warmth. Solara's eyes, deep and knowing, seemed to pierce through the layers of Lyra's soul. She spoke of the Voidweaver, revealing a truth that left Lyra reeling. The Voidweaver was once a starborn, a being of light and creation, who had succumbed to the seductive pull of darkness. This revelation struck a chord within Lyra, forcing her to grapple with the idea that even the most radiant of beings could fall. Solara offered Lyra a choice, one that would shape the course of her journey. She could undergo a rigorous training, a process that would unlock her latent abilities, but also force her to confront the fears and doubts she had buried deep within. Or she could continue her quest, as she was, unprepared and vulnerable, but free from the trials of self-discovery. The weight of the decision pressed heavily on Lyra, each option carrying its own risks and rewards. Kale stood quietly by her side, his steady presence a reminder that she was not alone in this. Yet the choice was hers to make. The path of training would demand courage and vulnerability, forcing her to face the shadows within herself. It was a daunting prospect, but one that might give her the strength she needed to stand against the Voidweaver. The other path, though less perilous, left her exposed to the unpredictable dangers that lay ahead. As Lyra gazed at the starlit city around her, she felt the weight of her destiny pressing in. The stars above seemed to watch, waiting for her decision. Would she choose to step into the unknown, to face her fears and emerge stronger? Or would she press forward, trusting in her wits and determination to see her through? The moment stretched, a quiet pause in the tapestry of her journey, as Lumina held its breath alongside her. As Lyra delved deeper into her training, the lines between past and present began to blur. Strange visions crept into her mind, fragments of a time long forgotten. She saw the Voidweaver not as a harbinger of chaos, but as a being of immense light and purpose, once revered among the stars. Its fall from grace was not born of malice, but of heartbreak, a sacrifice made to protect a universe that ultimately turned against it. These glimpses into its history stirred something within her, a mix of empathy and unease. Could this entity truly be the threat she had been taught to fear? Amid these revelations, cracks began to form in her partnership with Kale. His once steady presence grew distant, his actions marked by a quiet urgency she couldn't quite place. One night, under the cold light of a dying star, he finally revealed the truth. His family, warriors of a forgotten age, had been destroyed by the Voidweaver in its descent into darkness. For Kale, this wasn't just a mission, it was vengeance. His goal wasn't to control or understand the Voidweaver, but to annihilate it, no matter the cost. The weight of his confession hung heavy between them. Lyra felt torn. On one hand, she understood his pain, the raw need for justice that burned in his eyes. On the other, the Voidweaver's story had painted a different picture, one of tragedy, not malice. Could it still be redeemed, or was Kale's path the only way forward? Trust, once the cornerstone of their partnership, now felt fragile, like a thread stretched too thin. She found herself at a crossroads. To stand by Kale meant aligning herself with his quest for retribution, even if it meant sacrificing the chance to uncover the truth about the Voidweaver. To distance herself, however, would leave her alone in a galaxy where her mission had only just begun. The decision loomed over her, a shadow she couldn't shake. What path would she choose? Loyalty to her partner, or the pursuit of a deeper, more uncertain truth? As Lyra's training reached its pinnacle, she felt the Starborn energy coursing through her like a symphony of light and warmth. Her once hesitant movements had transformed into fluid, deliberate actions, each step a testament to her growing mastery. Kale watched with pride, his stern expression softening as he recognized the strength she had unlocked within herself. But this victory was fleeting. Across the galaxy, an ominous shadow grew. The Voidweaver's influence had begun to spread. Stars that once burned brightly began to flicker, their light snuffed out one by one, leaving behind cold, empty voids. The threat was no longer distant. It was here, and it demanded their attention. Determined to confront the entity, Lyra and Kale prepared to embark on their perilous journey. Their ship hummed with anticipation as it sliced through the cosmos, the vast expanse of stars stretching endlessly before them. Yet, the universe had other plans. Without warning, a fleet of Voidspawn vessels emerged from the darkness, their jagged forms blocking their path. The air inside the ship grew tense, the weight of the moment pressing down on everyone. Lyra's heart raced, but she steadied herself, drawing on the calm focus her training had instilled. She knew this was her moment, not just to prove herself, but to protect the stars and the people who depended on them. Stepping forward, she called upon her starborn powers, her hands glowing with a radiant light. The Voidspawn surged forward, their dark energy crackling against her shield. With every strike, she countered, her movements precise and unyielding. The battle was fierce, the clash of light and darkness illuminating the void around them. As the fight raged on, Lyra's confidence grew. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for every star that still burned, every life that still thrived. Her allies rallied behind her, their determination reignited by her courage. Together, they pushed back the Voidspawn fleet, their unity a beacon of hope in the face of encroaching darkness. But victory in this battle didn't mean the war was won. The Voidweaver still loomed, its presence a constant threat to the galaxy. Lyra knew this was only the beginning. Her journey was far from over, and the stakes had never been higher. As the stars glimmered faintly in the distance, she steeled herself for what lay ahead, ready to face whatever challenges the cosmos would bring. The battlefield is chaos. Ships clash in the darkness, their weapons blazing like fleeting stars against the endless void. Lyra stands at the helm of the Starborn fleet, her hands trembling as she channels her cosmic energy to shield her allies. But the Voidspawn are relentless, their cold, mechanical forms cutting through the ranks with terrifying precision. Each wave feels heavier than the last, and Lyra's strength begins to wane. She can feel the Voidweaver's presence, a shadowy force that seems to feed on the fear radiating from the Starborn. It's not just a physical battle, it's a war of the mind, and despair is its greatest weapon. Lyra's breath catches as she realizes the truth. The Voidweaver thrives on their hopelessness. It's not enough to fight back with raw power. She must ignite something deeper in her allies. Standing tall, she sends a surge of golden light through the comms system, her voice steady despite the storm around her. Remember why we fight. Remember the stars we protect, the futures we've dreamed of. This darkness cannot take that from us, not as long as we stand together. Her words ripple through the fleet, and for a moment, the tide of fear ebbs. But even as she rallies her comrades, Lyra's own doubts whisper in the back of her mind. Can she truly lead them to victory? What if her power isn't enough? She clenches her fists, pushing the thoughts aside. This isn't about her, it's about them, about every soul who's placed their trust in her. With renewed determination, she steps forward, her light growing brighter as the Starborn begin to fight with a unity they've never known before. The Voidweaver's shadow falters, and for the first time, Lyra senses something in its cold, mechanical presence: uncertainty. The battle is far from over, but hope, fragile yet unyielding, begins to take root. As Lyra and Kale navigated their ship through the swirling chaos of the collapsing nebula, the air grew heavy with an eerie, oppressive energy. The Voidweaver's presence loomed like a shadow, pulsing with a hunger that threatened to consume everything in its path. Ahead, the newborn star shimmered faintly, its light barely holding against the encroaching darkness. Lyra's hand tightened around the shard of the first star, its warmth a stark contrast to the cold dread settling in her chest. Kale's voice broke through the tension, steady but urgent. We can't let it reach that star. If the Voidweaver consumes it, the balance of the galaxy will be irreparably shattered. His eyes met Lyra's, and for a moment, the weight of their mission hung between them. They both knew what had to be done. Lyra took a deep breath, her fingers tracing the intricate patterns etched into the shard. I can use this. The shard's energy can disrupt the Voidweaver's ritual, but it'll take everything I have. Her words were calm, resolute, but the unspoken truth lingered in the air. Channeling the shard's full power could cost her life. Kale hesitated, his voice cracking with emotion. There has to be another way. We've come this far together. I can't lose you. But Lyra's gaze was unwavering. This isn't just about us, she said softly. It's about every life in the galaxy. If my sacrifice means they'll have a future, then it's worth it. The ship shuddered as they approached the heart of the nebula. The Voidweaver's form, now visible, a towering, ethereal figure wreathed in tendrils of darkness. It began its ritual, its movements deliberate, almost reverent, as it reached for the newborn star. Lyra stood, the shard glowing brighter in her hands. Get ready to pull back as soon as I release the energy, she instructed, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions within her. Kale clenched his fists, torn between protest and duty. Lyra, but she cut him off with a small, knowing smile. Thank you, Kale, for everything. With that, she stepped forward, the shard's light intensifying until it enveloped her completely. The Voidweaver turned, its hollow eyes narrowing as it sensed the threat. In a burst of radiant energy, Lyra unleashed the shard's power, a blinding wave of light surging toward the Voidweaver. The entity let out a deafening wail as the energy tore through its form, disrupting the ritual and scattering the darkness. But as the light faded, so did Lyra, her silhouette dissolving into the stars she had fought to protect. Kale stared, his heart heavy with grief and pride. The newborn star's light grew brighter, a testament to Lyra's sacrifice. The galaxy was safe, for now. But the cost was etched into his soul, a reminder of the courage and selflessness that had saved them all. As Lyra's hands clasped the shimmering shard, a surge of ancient energy courses through her, pulling her into a vision unlike anything she's ever known. The air around her shifts, the stars themselves seeming to bend and whisper as the figure of the first Starborn materializes before her. Radiant yet serene, their presence feels both awe-inspiring and deeply comforting. The Voidweaver's darkness, they speak, their voice echoing like a melody woven from the cosmos, cannot be vanquished by force or destruction. It is a shadow born of pain and isolation, and only compassion can mend what has been broken. Lyra's heart pounds as the weight of these words settles over her. The path she had chosen, sacrificing herself to destroy the Voidweaver, now feels like a mistake, a desperate act born of fear rather than understanding. The first Starborn's gaze holds hers, filled with a wisdom that transcends time. True strength, they continue, lies not in obliteration, but in the courage to seek connection, even in the face of darkness. For a moment, Lyra is paralyzed by the enormity of the decision before her. Her training, her instincts, everything has prepared her for battle, for sacrifice. But this demands something far more difficult: empathy, vulnerability, and the willingness to see the Voidweaver not as a monster, but as a being lost in its own torment. As the vision fades, Lyra is left standing in the quiet hum of the shard's glow, her thoughts swirling. She remembers the faces of her crew, their trust in her, and the hope they've placed in her leadership. This isn't just about saving the galaxy. It's about what kind of leader she chooses to be. Will she cling to the old ways of war and sacrifice, or will she forge a new path, one rooted in compassion and understanding? The choice is hers, and in this moment, Lyra realizes that her journey as a Starborn isn't just about mastering energy or battling darkness. It's about discovering the strength within herself to lead with heart, even when the universe feels cold and unforgiving. The shard pulses softly in her hand, as if urging her forward, and Lyra takes a deep breath, ready to face whatever comes next. Lyra stepped forward, her voice steady yet tinged with a quiet urgency as she addressed the Voidweaver. "There's still a choice for you, a path away from the shadows," she said, her words carrying the weight of both hope and determination. The Voidweaver's form shimmered, its darkness writhing as if caught in a storm of doubt. For a moment, it seemed to waver, its malevolent aura flickering under the light of Lyra's compassion. But Kale, standing at the edge of the cavern, saw only an enemy. His grip tightened on his weapon, his eyes blazing with a fury that had been building since the Voidweaver's first attack. "It doesn't deserve mercy," he growled, his voice low and trembling with unchecked emotion. Before Lyra could stop him, he lunged forward, his blade aimed at the heart of the entity. Lyra moved with swift precision, intercepting Kale just as his strike was about to land. "This isn't the way," she said firmly, her hands gripping his arm to halt his advance. Her eyes met his, pleading for him to see beyond his anger. "If we destroy it without giving it a chance, we're no better than the darkness it represents." Kale's chest heaved as he struggled against her hold, the fire in his eyes slowly dimming. Lyra's gaze softened, her empathy reaching out to him even as she continued to shield the Voidweaver. "I know what it's taken from you," she whispered, her voice gentle but resolute. "But this is not justice. It's vengeance, and it will only chain us to the same pain we're trying to escape." The Voidweaver, still trembling in the background, seemed to react to her words. Its form flickered again, a faint glow breaking through the inky blackness. Lyra turned back to it, her voice steady. "You've been lost in the shadows for so long, but you don't have to stay there. Let go of the darkness. It's not too late." In that moment, the cavern fell silent, the tension palpable. Lyra stood between two forces, one fueled by rage, the other by despair, and her choice would shape the fate of them all. Her heart ached with the weight of the decision, but she knew that compassion, however challenging, was the only way to break the cycle of destruction. The tension between Lyra and Kale had been simmering for some time, but her decision to intervene in the Starborn Council's plans was the spark that ignited their conflict. Kale's voice was sharp, his words laced with frustration, as he accused her of betraying the very mission they'd sworn to uphold. "We were supposed to protect the Starborn, not undermine them," he said, his anger palpable. Lyra stood her ground, her gaze steady but conflicted. "Sometimes protection means challenging the path we're on," she replied, her voice soft but resolute. Yet the weight of her choice hung heavy between them, a chasm neither knew how to bridge. In their moment of discord, the Voidweaver struck. The dark entity, ever attuned to the fractures in its enemies, saw their division as the perfect opportunity to unleash its final assault. Waves of shadow surged across the battlefield, consuming everything in their path. The air grew thick with an oppressive energy, and the ground trembled beneath the force of the Voidweaver's power. Lyra and Kale, once inseparable, now stood apart, their combined strength fractured just when they needed it most. But as the Voidweaver's assault intensified, something shifted. Lyra's eyes met Kale's, and in that fleeting moment, they both realized the stakes were too high for their disagreement to stand in the way. "We can't let this divide us," Lyra said urgently, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Not now, not when everything depends on us." Kale hesitated, but then nodded, his resolve hardening. "Together," he said simply, and with that word, the rift between them began to close. Their renewed partnership was not just a reunion of allies, but a fusion of their unique abilities. Lyra's mastery over the starborn light and Kale's command of the cosmic winds intertwined, creating a force stronger than either could wield alone. As they stood side by side, their combined energy formed a barrier against the Voidweaver's darkness, a beacon of hope in the face of overwhelming despair. The battle that followed was fierce, a clash of wills that shook the very fabric of the cosmos. But in their unity, Lyra and Kale found the strength to turn the tide. The Voidweaver, sensing the shift, recoiled as Lyra and Kale's powers surged forward, a symphony of light and wind that dissolved the entity's shadowy form. For a moment, the cosmos seemed to hold its breath, the battlefield silent save for the fading echoes of their combined strike. And then, it was over. The Voidweaver was no more, its presence erased by the unity of those who had once stood divided. As the dust settled, Lyra and Kale shared a quiet glance, the weight of their victory tempered by the lessons learned. Their journey had tested them in ways neither could have anticipated, but it was their ability to reconcile, to find common ground in the face of adversity, that had ultimately saved them. Their story became a testament to the power of partnership, a reminder that even the deepest rifts can be healed when the cost of division is too great to bear. As the battlefield trembled under the weight of the Voidweaver's oppressive darkness, Lyra and Kale stood side by side, their starborn energies intertwining like constellations in a cosmic dance. The air crackled with power as they focused their combined strength, their hands glowing with the radiance of 1,000 stars. This was no ordinary clash of forces. It was the culmination of their journey, a moment where light and shadow would decide the fate of the galaxy. With a shared breath, they unleashed their most profound ability, a surge of pure starlight that pierced the Voidweaver's suffocating void. The darkness recoiled, fragmented, and then began to dissolve, as if the universe itself was sighing in relief. But what emerged from the fading shadows was not the monstrous entity they had fought. It was a being of light, its form shimmering with the same celestial energy that Lyra and Kale carried. This was Alien, a starborn warrior who had once been a guardian of hope, but had succumbed to despair. His story unfolded in fragments, whispers of a time when loneliness and grief had twisted his purpose, turning him into the very thing he had sworn to defeat. As the truth settled, Lyra and Kale felt a profound connection to him, a reminder of the fragile line between light and darkness that every starborn must walk. Alien's redemption was not just a victory, it was a revelation. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy witnessed the power of unity, of two starborn joining forces to mend what had been broken. This moment would be etched into the annals of history, a turning point that redefined what it meant to be a guardian of the cosmos. The echoes of their battle rippled across the stars, igniting hope in worlds that had long been shrouded in fear. Yet even as the light prevailed, a quiet question lingered in the air: how many others, like Alien, had been lost to despair, and what would it take to bring them back? The journey of Lyra and Kale was far from over, but this victory reminded them of the most powerful truth: no darkness is too great to overcome when light is shared. As the starlight of Lumina bathed the horizon, Lyra and Kale stepped onto the city's shimmering streets, greeted by cheers that echoed like a symphony of gratitude. Banners bearing their names fluttered in the cosmic breeze, and the Starborn welcomed them as saviors. Kale, ever the steadfast companion, wore a proud smile, but Lyra's heart was heavy. The defeat of the Voidweaver had brought temporary peace, yet she sensed a deeper unrest in the fabric of the universe. The stars themselves seemed to whisper warnings only she could hear. While the celebrations unfolded around her, Lyra found herself drawn to the edge of the city, where the vast expanse of the cosmos stretched endlessly. She gazed at the swirling galaxies, their light both beautiful and foreboding. The balance of the universe was still fragile, a delicate dance of light and shadow that required constant vigilance. The question lingered in her mind like a distant echo. Was her journey truly complete? Could she rest here among the Starborn, or was her purpose greater than even she understood? Kale approached quietly, his presence a comforting anchor amid her swirling thoughts. "You've done something incredible, Lyra," he said, his voice steady yet soft. "But I can see you're not at peace. What's troubling you?" Lyra hesitated, her eyes fixed on the stars. "What if this victory isn't enough?" she admitted. "What if the balance we've restored is just a fleeting moment? The cosmos is vast, Kale. There's so much more out there, and I feel called to protect it." The weight of her words hung in the air, a testament to the burden of her destiny. Kale nodded thoughtfully, his respect for her unwavering. "Then we'll face it together," he said simply. Lyra's heart swelled with gratitude, yet the decision before her remained daunting. To stay with the Starborn would be to find solace in community, but to continue her journey would mean embracing the unknown, venturing into the uncharted reaches of the stars. The choice was hers alone, and it would shape not only her path, but the fate of the cosmos itself. As the twin moons of Lumina cast their silver light over the horizon, Lyra stood at the edge of the crystal city, her heart heavy yet resolute. The Starborn amulet around her neck pulsed faintly, a reminder of the duty she could no longer ignore. The Voidweaver's shadow had spread far beyond Lumina, consuming countless stars and leaving galaxies in darkness. She knew she could no longer remain within the safety of her home. With a deep breath, She turned her back on Lumina, her footsteps echoing softly as she stepped into the unknown. Kale watched her from afar, his gaze filled with both concern and admiration. He had always known Lyra was destined for greatness, but witnessing her courage first and stirred something deep within him. Without a second thought, he followed her, catching up as the first rays of dawn painted the sky in hues of gold. "You didn't think you'd go alone, did you?" he said, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. Lyra turned, her eyes meeting his, and for a moment, the weight of the journey ahead felt a little lighter. Together, they began their quest to restore the stars, their path lit by the faint glow of the amulet and the unspoken bond between them. The galaxy stretched before them, vast and mysterious, filled with challenges and wonders alike. As they traveled, they encountered remnants of worlds touched by the Voidweaver's hunger, planets where light had faded and hope seemed lost. Yet with each step, they found ways to reignite the stars, their combined strength and determination breathing life back into the cosmos. Their journey was not without peril. The Voidweaver's minions lurked in the shadows, their whispers carrying a chilling reminder of the darkness they sought to overcome. But Lyra and Kale faced each trial with unwavering resolve, their trust in one another growing stronger with every obstacle they conquered. In the quiet moments between battles, they shared stories of their past, their dreams for the future, and the unspoken fears that lingered in their hearts. These moments of connection became their anchor, a source of strength that carried them forward. As they moved deeper into the heart of the galaxy, the Starborn amulet began to resonate more powerfully, as if responding to their shared purpose. Lyra could feel its energy intertwining with her own, guiding her toward the stars that needed her most. Kale stood by her side, his presence a steady reminder that she was never truly alone. Together, they were more than just travelers on a quest. They were a beacon of hope, a testament to the power of unity in the face of overwhelming darkness. The road ahead was long, and the challenges they would face were unknown. But with every star they restored, every light they rekindled, they brought the galaxy one step closer to healing. And in that shared purpose, Lyra and Kale found not only the strength to continue, but also a deeper understanding of what it meant to stand together, two souls united against the void. The air around them seemed to shimmer with anticipation as Lyra and Kale stepped into the heart of the hidden star Nursery. Before them stretched a vast, otherworldly expanse, a celestial cradle where stars were born and extinguished, their light fading into the void. The silence was profound, almost reverent, as if the universe itself held its breath. Lyra clutched the first star shard tightly, its faint glow pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. "This is it," she whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of awe and resolve. "This is where we bring it back." Kale nodded, his gaze sweeping across the darkened nursery. "Let's not waste another moment," he said, his voice steady but filled with urgency. Together, they moved deeper into the chamber, their footsteps echoing softly against the ancient, star-forged ground. Lyra raised the shard high, its light intensifying as if it recognized its purpose. She closed her eyes, summoning every ounce of her strength, and began to channel the shard's power. The air around her crackled with energy, and the dormant stars around them began to stir, their cores flickering faintly like embers waiting to be rekindled. With a surge of determination, Lyra unleashed the shard's full power. A brilliant cascade of light erupted from her hands, weaving through the nursery like a cosmic thread, touching each extinguished star. One by one, they reignited, their fiery brilliance returning to the heavens. The nursery lit up in a dazzling symphony of light, casting radiant hues across the galaxy. Lyra's breath quickened as she felt the immense strain of the act, her energy draining with every star she revived. Yet she pressed on, driven by the knowledge that this was their only hope. As the final star burst back to life, Lyra's strength gave way. Her legs buckled, and she stumbled forward, her vision blurring. Kale was there in an instant, his arms catching her as she fell. "Lyra," he called, his voice thick with concern. She looked up at him, her face pale but serene. "We did it," she murmured, a faint smile touching her lips. Kale held her tightly, his heart pounding with a mix of relief and fear. "You did it," he corrected softly, his voice filled with admiration. "But you gave too much of yourself." Lyra's eyes fluttered closed as she rested against him, her breathing shallow. Kale's grip tightened, his resolve hardening. "I won't let anything happen to you," he vowed, his voice low but unwavering. "Not after everything we fought for." Around them, the stars blazed with renewed vigor, their light spilling across the galaxy in a testament to their triumph. Yet in that moment, Kale's only focus was the fragile figure in his arms, the one who had risked everything to bring the stars back to life. As Lyra's eyes flutter open, the familiar hum of the ecliptica surrounds her, a comforting reminder of the home she's built among the stars. Her body feels lighter, her once boundless powers now a faint whisper within her. Yet as she sits up, a quiet strength settles in her chest, one that has nothing to do with the starborn energy that once defined her. It's a strength born of hardship, of loss, and of the countless choices that brought her here. She gazes out the viewport at the vast tapestry of stars, their light steady and unyielding. Her mind drifts to the battles fought, the lives saved, and the sacrifices made. It wasn't the raw power of the Starborn that carried her through. It was her ability to see the humanity in every soul she encountered, her willingness to stand even when the weight of the galaxy threatened to crush her. Compassion, she realizes, is a force far greater than any cosmic energy. Kale steps into the room, his presence grounding her as it always has. There's no need for words. Their shared journey speaks volumes. Together, they've faced the unimaginable, and together, they'll continue to forge a path forward. The galaxy is at peace, but Lyra knows better than to believe the work is done. There are always new horizons to explore, new challenges to embrace, and new lives to touch. With a determined smile, she rises and walks to the helm, her fingers steady on the controls. The ecliptica hums to life, its engines a symphony of possibility. Where to next? Kale asks, his voice a mix of curiosity and readiness. Lyra's gaze lingers on the stars ahead, her spirit unshaken. "Wherever we're needed," she replies, her voice quiet but resolute. The ship leaps into the void, carrying them toward the next chapter of their story. A story marked not by the power they wielded, but by the hearts they touched along the way.